behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association Institute of Continuing Legal Education to day 2 of the Law Office Management Training. Our first tutor for today is Mr. Chike Obianwu. Chike is Deputy Managing Partner at Templars and the head of the firm's finance practice group. He holds a Master's of Law degree from the University College London and is admitted to practice law in Nigeria and in England and Wales. He is recognized as a leading finance lawyer by both chambers and partners and IFLR 1000. He was formerly Joint Deputy Head of Corporate Finance and Advisory and Legal Counsel at the leading Nigerian investment bank, Zenith Capital Limited. Before Zenith Capital, he had worked in structured and project finance law at Templars and at another leading law firm. Chike will be discussing financial issues in the management of law firm practices. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Chike Obianwu to this afternoon's session. Chike, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tobena, and thanks to the ICLE for having me. Tobena, please, can you confirm that I can be heard?
Chike, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks a lot. I've been asked to speak about legal issues in the management of law practices, I guess, in Nigeria. And the way that I've broken down the topic that I'm supposed to talk about is looking at financial issues at the point of starting your practice, looking at financial issues to do with running the practice, looking at financial issues at the point the practice is making money and you're asking yourself, what do I do with the money? And then obviously there's the next step and the next step and the next step. Now, I would like for this to be an interactive session in the sense that I'll just very quickly get past the boring aspects of my presentation and then begin to listen to people engage specifically on issues that they would rather talk about rather than perhaps the garbage that I want to talk to you about. Now, essentially, what is it that you're thinking about when you're starting a practice? How do I fund the practice that I'm looking to start? What are the sources from which you derive the capital that you start your practice with? And how do you account for that startup capital? And how do you, so for example, you borrow money, or maybe you're looking at your personal savings and all of that. And what are the implications of all of those to the practice that you're looking to start? So if you have borrowed money, then obviously you must ensure that in running the practice that you make enough revenue to repay what it is that you borrowed. And even if you're using your own funds or family funds, you're also looking to either repay it or at a minimum turn a profit. Now, so what are the initial issues you think about? What are those things you need to have in place before you start a practice? That's what you deploy your capital to. Do you need physical space? In these days of working from anywhere, do you work from home? Do you work virtually, et cetera, et cetera? And how much will it cost to deal with that startup element? How about a physical library, a virtual library? What is it that the scale of the practice that you're looking to establish requires? How about work tools, computers? Do you need furniture in a physical office, or does a virtual existence suffice? How about people? Is it a one-man practice? Are you looking to partner with people? Are you looking to employ people? And what are the cost implications of that? How about some advertising within the scope of what the Legal Practitioners Act and Rules of Professional Conduct allow us? Do you need a website? Do you need some other kind of permissible publicity, and how much will that cost? So those are the startup things that you think about. Then you go past those, and then you go into running the law practice. Now, a few key takeaways in running the law practice are: always remember it's a business. Oftentimes we forget it's a vocation. We love what we do, and we get very passionate about instructions that we receive. But oftentimes we forget that we're running a business, and we do not take those steps that you're required to take to run a financially successful and viable business. So always remember it's a business. Now, because it's a business, always remember that as much as you may personify the practice in terms of how people come into the business to purchase your services, you're not the practice and the practice is not you. Try to keep the two as separate as possible, and that will help you with the financial discipline that you require to run a financially successful and profitable practice. And that also means that you require strong policies and procedures in running the practice. Now, to a few practical points, right? Some of these things are best practices that are good to adopt. Some of them have regulatory compulsion behind them. So you maintain a bank account for the practice. Many of us sole practitioners still live in that world where there's no dividing line between the funds in your bank account and the funds of your practice. Try as much as possible, even though you're a sole practitioner, to maintain a bank account for your business where the revenue of the business goes and expenses relating to the business come out of. Even if you're going to self-fund something, let's have that partition where money goes from your personal account into the business account. And when you're paying yourself back, money goes from the business account into your personal account. So you're able to keep very tidy records, and they come in handy for different reasons that we may talk about later. So you have to account for the income and expenditure of the business. Try as much as possible to document instructions that you receive and the financial terms upon which those instructions have been received. So it's not a verbal issue. As much as possible, have engagement letters, regardless of who is instructing you. They may be friends, relatives, whatever, but try as much as possible to document. Billing and collection, very, very important. Now, as lawyers, I think lawyers are trained to be very shy about matters of money. And even when we discuss money, we're not as sophisticated as we can be, or we should be. And I'll talk about that a little later. So billing and collection is key. Ensure that you bill in a timely fashion and ensure that you're collecting your fees in a timely fashion. Sometimes you have terms of engagement that require you to bill within a specific period of time. And for certain clients, if you do not bill within that period of time, you don't qualify to get paid. So you lose the reward for the work you've done. Also, be mindful of the billing cycles for the clients that you work for. So sometimes you work for someone, but you don't realize that your engagement letter says that when you deliver an invoice, it is payable within 180 days. So there's a challenge because you've done this work, you've rendered an invoice, but there's a 180-day period that you may have to wait within which you get paid. What happens to you in that period of time? How do you deal with financially delinquent clients? You may have clients who you've done work for, they didn't pay the first time, they didn't pay the second time. How much longer would you continue to service them that way and not get paid? Would you have a blacklist of people who you do not do work for because they do not pay or they do not pay on time? You must plan and budget for your business. Without planning and budget, you're just running a madhouse, right? Performance targets. It may be for yourself if you're a sole practitioner. It may be for your employees, or it may be for the partnership if you have a partnership. What targets do you set for yourself? And how do you measure yourself against those targets and performance against those targets? Now, I spoke about when you bill for work, but there's a long lead time between when you bill and when you get paid. That could create cash flow issues. How do you manage that gap between when you bill and when you actually get paid? Is it an overdraft from a bank? Do you build a cash reserve that tides you over during that period? How about the period of time when work is dry, but you must keep the light bulbs on? You must pay your rent. You must pay your staff if you have staff. How do you deal with cash flow issues? So those are things to think about. Now, I've spoken about keeping books of accounts, etc., etc. Lawyers in law school are taught solicitor's account. Is that sufficient knowledge for you to be the one who keeps your records? Or do you require the services of an accountant? Can you afford one for a small size law practice? Or would it be safer and cheaper to look for outsourcing? And how do you deal with confidentiality? How do you find the right accountant who will provide those services for you and respect the issues around confidentiality that lawyers have to deal with? Now, one very important point that lawyers must think about is pricing and profitability. Oftentimes, we price our work from the top of our head. So there's this brief, how much are you going to charge for it? You can mention a number from off the top of your head. Oh, I'll charge 1 million naira. I'll charge 10 million naira. I'll charge 20 million, 500,000, 100,000. But oftentimes the price we put as lawyers has no relationship with anything whatsoever. It's just really a pretty sounding number. So you must determine what is the cost for doing your business. So if you run a business that has an office, you have rent, you have overheads, how do you allocate the cost of all of those inputs into your work? How do you allocate it to the work you do so that you're able to say, over this period of time, for these assignments or briefs that I performed, this is how much it cost me to deliver these services. And if this is my cost, then I expect that at a minimum, I should make my cost plus a profit. So that way, you're having some kind of objective scientific way to determine what is your cost and therefore what should you be billing for your work. The woman who sells akara down the road does this math, but it is shocking that we as lawyers oftentimes don't. So if somebody says, I'll pay you 20 million naira to do this, we get excited. Sometimes they say it's an all-in cost. We get excited. After a period of time, you realize you've spent a lot of money getting on planes, you spent a lot of money paying hotel bills, etc. But they told you it's an all-in cost and you didn't think about it in terms of what is my cost, what should my profit be? Is it optional for me to recover my cost in relation to every work that I do? Should I accept lump sum fees without regard to what should ordinarily be reimbursables? What role does competitive pressure play in how lawyers actually bill for the work that they do? Oftentimes, we operate under that fear that if I don't take this work, maybe Kunle will take it. And therefore, because Kunle will take it at this price, I might as well take it, even though it's unprofitable. So you must do that analysis to determine whether the work you're accepting is profitable in the first place. If it is not profitable, it may well be that there's a reason why you will do that work regardless. But first of all, determine whether it is profitable for you. And if it is not profitable, it may be that you're looking at your work and you're saying, I have some other work that is decidedly profitable that may subsidize my taking on this other work that's not profitable. But there's a strategic reason why I'm taking on this other work, even though it's not profitable. Then it's understandable that you're taking that work on for a reason that makes sense in the context of your wider business. There are also pricing strategies that look at differentiating yourself from the crowd. Yes, it may be fine that Kunle will take that work that is not profitable and let him do it. I wouldn't get into a place where I'm taking on profitable work, and the market will know me for that. And if the market knows me for that, but I do such good work that the market becomes willing to pay me that different profitable fee that I believe I should command. So these are the long and short of it is that we should have strategies around how we price for our work and thinking about profitability at every point in time. Now, whether or not it is your strategy to ensure that anytime you're doing business, you stay profitable, it's also essentially your decision as a business. But at least it's important that you're mindful of all of those. Now, there's certain practices around finances that are compelled upon us by law. So as if you have a business name, you're a limited partnership, you're a limited liability partnership, the Companies Act requires that you make annual returns, your annual returns should be accompanied by financial statements. So even if you weren't going to keep financial statements because it's good practice, law most likely requires you to do that, unless you're trading in your own personal name, in which case there's probably no compulsion, but as I said, it is good practice. Now, tax collection and remittance. You may be a one-man practice or a one-person practice, or you may have employees. If you're a one-man practice, at a minimum, when you issue your invoice, there's VAT to be collected. The VAT, as you collect it, you're required to make remittances to the government for the VAT you collect. You withhold tax on payments that you make to service providers. You're required to account to the government for the withholding tax. Pay as you earn, to the extent that you have employees within your business, you should be up to date in making tax remittances to the government from the deductions you make from your employees. Accounting for funds you receive on behalf of clients. The rules of professional conduct require that you must account for funds you receive on behalf of clients. The rules require that you maintain clients' money accounts. You do not commingle the funds of your practice and the funds that you hold on behalf of clients. Pension contributions, if you have employees of up to 15, or if you've decided to be a voluntary complier, you must make those deductions and your own contribution, and you must remit those to the government. Group life insurance, the Pensions Act requires that. Health insurance, NHIS Act requires that. Now, so there are all of these things that we must do to ensure that we're complying with the law, we're running a business that has financial discipline, has proper financial reporting. And then finally, there's money in the bank. What do you do with the money? Now, should a law firm, what happens to money in the bank? As I said, you've done all of the work, you've looked at your costs, there's now profit. And before I go into that, obviously, because I have said it is advisable that you keep the practice separate from yourself, it means that for the work you do in the firm, you should determine how you reward yourself. Do you pay yourself a salary, or do you wait until profit is declared by you or your partners or the business and then make a drawing? Whatever it is you decide what works in your specific situation. So there's money in the bank. How do you deal with profits? How do you take profits? Do you take all of it, or should you plow back some into the business? How do you incentivize your people if you have people who are your employee? Do you create a scheme by which if lawyers attract work, they get paid a certain percentage of the value of the work they bring? Do you have partners, and how do you reward those partners? Now, do you build a cash reserve in the business? I spoke about the cash flow situation where you have billed for work, but it takes so long for you to get paid. A cash reserve probably helps you keep the light bulbs on during that period. But how large a cash reserve should you have in your business? It may well be that it is not advisable to leave all the cash in the world in the business. It may be more efficient to distribute the cash amongst the partners or to yourself and leave so much as is required to keep the business going in those times that you have cash flow problems. And then the excess gets into your hands as profit, and it is utilized somewhere else. Maybe an investment in your personal name, investment in the names of the other members of the firm. Should the firm be making investments in its name? It's a controversial point. And it may be that you're making investment in the same way that you build cash reserves, so that if lean times come, the business is able to sustain itself. But beyond a certain point, it may not be financially wise to be investing in the name of the business. But then again, it depends upon what sort of firm that you run. And that brings me to the other issue of, should the firm own a building, for example? A lot of us go into the business of building for the firm. And the way we often think about it is, why should I be paying rent every year when I can build a place and save that money? And it may make sense for you if you run a firm where you're the sole funder of the firm. But the bigger the firm gets, the more you run into things like partnerships, it may not make all that much financial sense for you to tie up the funds of the business in a building when perhaps the logic in financial management may be that that business needs to be able to pay its cost on an ongoing basis, while the present partners of the business take as much profit as possible from the business. But that also depends upon your specific circumstances. But I think the takeaway is that in any specific case, it may not necessarily be one size fits all, and it may not necessarily be the smartest things to accumulate all the money in the world in your business and all the investments in the world in your business and acquire all the property in the world in that business. If you understand that as a takeaway, then you have to do a specific analysis regarding your specific situation. I will stop here and begin to take as many questions as time would allow me to take.
Hello, Chike. Thank you very much for that. And you are indeed correct. I would be happy to take that business away if your hands are full. I suspect I'm speaking the minds of so many other people here. But be that as it may.
I wish I could say my hands were full, but they're as empty and as hungry as you can see.
Okay, I will not push any further. So thank you very much for this very succinct presentation of yours. And there are two key areas that I have seen. The reason I'm doing this is because we need to generate as many questions as possible. As you very well know, funding of law practices is a major issue for many lawyers and many law firms of all stripes, small, mid-size, big size. It's a recurring and continuing problem that we lawyers have. And unfortunately, insufficient attention has been paid to it. So I'll take you up and hopefully the floor will be opened. In fact, I think it's been opened so that as many questions as possible can be raised. But to set the ball rolling, Chike, two key issues in what you have raised, funding and pricing. Let us speak to two types of law firms in the first instance. I'm a small startup. I have big ambitions, right? I have identified potential clients, or perhaps there are one or two clients already waiting in the wings, and they've given me some indication of the kind of legal work that they require my services for. So regardless of the fact that I'm working from home or some place that is just convenient for me, how in practical terms do I get this funding? And what do I really even need the funding for? Forgive me if that sounds like a counterintuitive question, but what do I really need the funding for? Okay, so I need a computer, I need data access. What else do I need funding for? I ask this so that we are clear about what exactly we should be seeking funding for. Please bear in mind that I'm speaking about that small startup firm. Then closely allied to that is what you will call a mid-sized firm. So we've started practicing, some work has started to roll in. We have some clientele, but we also want to scale up. We want to punch a little bit higher than where we are punching, right? How do we get to that next place? Again, what do we need to actually spend money on? Now, that's as far as funding is concerned. I'd like you to also consider drilling down a bit more with pricing. Oftentimes, we are just the recipient of whatever the client wants to pay. And yes, we accept it. Should that always be the case? I hear you about what essentially will qualify as market differentiation with your pricing. Again, can you speak to that startup firm and that mid-sized firm that doesn't want to lose the opportunity of this instruction, but deep down, you're also not sure whether this covers our overheads and can raise our heads above water a little bit? Please, as many questions are also welcome.
So thanks for those questions. So let's look at a startup law firm, right? A startup law practice. There's actually no one size fits all answer. So I take my personal example, right? We leave law school And at different times after I left law school, there were different things that we tried our hands on, right? Even when we were employed in smaller practices owned by others. So you and a friend probably have some letterhead, right? That letterhead names a place as your office, but in reality, that place is where you live, and the branch office is where your partner lives, right? And for the basic work you're doing at that time, all that you require is probably access to a business center where you go and type up things, right? You probably can't even afford a computer at the time. And what is it that the person is asking you to do? Some small startup people are doing searches for banks, but they're doing those searches in such large volume that there is maybe their instruction pays 2,000 naira per search, or 5,000 naira, or whatever. But you're doing it in such sufficient volume that when you take out your cost, there's some small profit on it. And that's how you start. But that immediately tells you that you don't need to rent an office. You don't need to do any advertising except the mouth-to-mouth conversation that you're having with friends, relatives, people in your mosque, people in your church, people within your circle, right? So the thing to determine is, what is the work that is required of me, and what is that basic minimum that I require to carry out that work? Is it a computer? Am I able to do it using my phone? Do I need a computer and a printer and that's it? Do I need my mobile phone? So you start and scale your business to the level that is required for what you have to do. That way it is sustainable, because if you start up big, but you don't have matching revenue, or you've overborrowed, then you have made several improper financial decisions straight out the gate. So that's really the way I would look at it. What you require depends upon what it is your instructions require you to do. And try to scale your costs as much as possible to those needs. That is the way I would.
They don't have their listing yet.
I would respond.
Right? Hello.
Now, the next point is, so what if you want to begin to scale up? As you begin to scale up, right? You must, at every point in time, when you're small, try to match your costs, control your costs, so that you don't get into a situation where you're owing debts that are not sustainable. You probably may not be able to avoid debts at the beginning, but try to keep those debts as controllable as possible, so that your revenue will be able, at some point in time and as quickly as possible, to meet your obligations to your creditors. If you want to scale up, now, there have been situations in the life of law firms where you have invoices from credible clients, and you're able to go to some relative, some friend, or even a bank and say, because it is going to take so long for this person to pay me, but I can demonstrate to you that this person actually pays regularly, but he pays only after 180 days or 300 days or whatever. I want to borrow money against these invoices. Or perhaps you have access to the funding that the MBA has graciously arranged with bankers, and you're going into that window to see whether you're able to raise capital. But at every point in time, please scale the borrowing that you're undertaking in relation to your practice to what your practice actually needs, and not that you want to devote the funds to frivolities, if you like, and then get yourself in a situation where you're unable to generate sufficient revenue to meet those obligations. Now, speaking about pricing, again, no one size fits all, but there are certain sacrifices we must make to be able to succeed in this business. So when I say that you need to figure out what the cost of doing the work that you do is. I didn't mean that the outcome of that is that every single thing you do must be profitable. It may be that you start up just breaking even. In other words, it costs me this much to do this work, and that is exactly how much I'm getting paid, or I'm getting paid so little more than how much it cost me. It cost me 500,000 to do this work, but they pay me 505,000. It cost me 10,000, but they pay me 12, or they don't pay me, they pay me 9,000. Some of those would happen, but there has to be some thinking behind the work you take at any point in time. Maybe I'm doing this in order to carve a niche for myself. Maybe I'm doing this in order to ingratiate myself into the space of this specific client. So it may be an entry cost, as you know, that would be the fancy term you use for it. It may be publicity for me. It may be sometimes there's work that you do if you have employees, and it is really to keep your people busy. Because if your people are not busy, perhaps they start thinking other thoughts, right? So pricing is a very sensitive issue, but ultimately to run a successful practice, you should have a sufficient mix of work. The very profitable, the not so profitable, and then the unprofitables, that when you aggregate them, you have enough revenue to at least break even so that you're not indebted. And even if you're indebted, that you're not indebted for so long that the business becomes uneconomic, unsustainable, unwise, or whatever. But the starting point is always to understand where you are. Am I in an unprofitable situation? And if I am, is there a strategic reason why I should continue doing this?
Okay, thank you again, Chike. There are a few questions rolling in, and please, we'll still need more. There's a question here for you from Tokumbo Gundipe. He says, good afternoon, all. Shouldn't lawyers adopt a strategy of shared resources instead of trying to do it all on their own? For instance, it's feasible to rent a small space in an office and pay for shared services, such as secretarial and administrative staff. I imagine that is so, but perhaps, Chike, you could dwell on that a bit more, but please just hold on. Gift Major also makes a reference to MBA's scale of fees, but adds that it is not being adhered to. Then perhaps you might also want to dwell on the fact that talking about the income, the financing of law practice and law firms, it will perhaps help us lawyers to know that not every money or not every income generated is profit. And to that extent, some will go to overhead, some might go to debt servicing. So it needs a situation whereby even with our bank accounts, some of these things are not commingled, and perhaps we're talking about some kind of differentiation. Unfortunately, not everybody does that. So every income that comes in is just deemed as something that can be spent. Chike, perhaps you might want to dwell on that as well, so that for a practitioner at whatever level, when 100,000 naira comes in reality, when he drills down, he might find out that the disposable portion of that is not more than 20,000 naira. But it needs some basic accounting skills, which is another aspect of all of this that I see implied in what you have been talking about. So over to you, Chike, while we still welcome more questions from the audience.
So shared resources is actually not something new in the business. It may well be that not enough people are doing it. The first law practice that I worked for in Lagos, right, was in a flat somewhere on Strachan Street that had a sign on the door, law office. But the reason why he had a sign on the door, law office, was that there was more than one law practice in there. So the practitioners in that flat decided to just name the flat law office. If you walked in there, the place that should have been the living room, if it was being used for the purpose it was built, had a secretary, and at some point had a litigation clerk. It is only if you said who you were looking for that you will realize, you wouldn't even realize. It is probably as you go into the different rooms in the flats that you would realize who that there's more than one practitioner who is running a separate business, who is resident there. So it's not something unusual. And as long as the practitioners have an understanding as to how to share those resources and how to, pay the cost of those resources, it is something that is worth encouraging. And it's not a new practice at all. The next question was MBA scale of fees. Now, there's such a thing as there are lots of reasons why MBA scale of fees may or may not work, right? Amongst them is, and I spoke about this, there's fee pressure, right? There's competitive pressure. So even if all lawyers got together and said, we will not do conveyancing work unless we were paid in accordance with the MBA fees, right? Not MBA, it's called it's a scale of fees that is inside of the Legal Practitioners Act. If my memory serves me right. Now, there has to be some compulsive enforcement means by which the market submits to paying those fees. As long as that compulsive means is not there, it becomes a matter of the forces of demand and supply. And in many respects, we have the unfortunate situation where the work that we do and the selling and buying of the work that we do is seen as a buyer's market, where oftentimes the buyer calls the shots as to how much gets paid. So we are all in a competition, in a drive to the bottom to determine what we bill. Now, there are different things that one has to think about. One is that there's so much more that lawyers should be able or should be concentrating on doing. But what happens is that too many of us are concentrated on doing roughly the same things. And therefore, there's an oversupply. And therefore, the buyers call the shots. But if we began to pay attention to different practice areas so that we competed less in some of the over-concentrated places, perhaps the forces of demand and supply will solve this problem of what is a decent fee that a lawyer should be paid in relation to the work that they do. Now, some people compare us to, how about licensed surveyors, that there's some fiat by which if you were going to register a land title and you hadn't paid a licensed surveyor what their skill requires, then you won't be able to register. I mean, until we get to a place where there was something that required that you must pay a lawyer within a certain skill before you did something that you must do, then we will not have that equivalency in practice. So okay. It just will fall back to demand and supply.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh, please go on.
So income and financing of law practice, not every cent and not every cover that comes into a law firm is profit. Absolutely. And that is the reason why I said we shouldn't be thinking about, 10 million, 1 million, 2 million, 200,000. What they're meaningless. The revenue you generate as a lawyer must always be placed side by side when you think about it with what is it costing me to actually generate this profit? How much did I borrow? How much is my rent? How much am I paying my secretary? How much am I paying this person? You must add all of that up, place it side by side with what you've gotten, and then determine what exactly is the profit. Account for what should be your salary if you're a sole practitioner or if you're a partnership or whatever. Put all of that together. your cost of attending court, your cost of flying, your cost of staying in a hotel, all of those things must be put down. And then now, oftentimes also, I think you should make this point that it's fine that the first time you got instructed to do a certain thing, you naively accepted to be paid X amount of money. It's fine. But record your cost for doing that particular task or that particular assignment. When you finish it, you now have an idea of this is actually how much it should cost to do this. So that next time somebody is asking you to do the same, you say, based on my experience, this should cost me about X amount to do. Therefore, to be fair, my fee should be X amount plus this much that I determine is my profit. You don't necessarily have to break it down to that person, but at least you know internally that this is how much it's costing me, and I must make this minimum for this to be profitable. Now, that knowledge is the first blow is half the battle. So that knowledge is half the battle. Go out there and then find that client who is willing to pay you that right price for that work. One thing to also note is that no matter how lowly your practice is, you must determine as early as possible that you cannot be all things to all men, and it is not every single instruction that you must accept.
Thank you very much. Thank you exceedingly well. There are further questions here, which I'll just quickly read out and have your take on it. There's a question from Emmanuel Inyada. He says, my question revolves around pricing and billing. Please, what are the most pragmatic billing and pricing practices utilized by yourself and your firm? Well, Chike, you might want to share trade secrets. In doing this, do you distinguish between local and foreign clients, individuals, and companies? There are one or two more. There's also a question from Olajide Onosoya. Can we always look at what income comes in to determine the level of investment in a law firm? If you do not invest in the first place, you may not actually get the business and or exposure as a law firm to get business. I'm not entirely clear about that, but I guess it is about law firms investing. There's a comment here by Uchechi Anya Ele. The scale of charges are not up to date with commercial realities in Nigeria. I reckon very few would argue with you, Uchechi. There's also a question again from Olajide Onosoya. How does a small, mid-sized law firm generate income? Well, aspects of that have already been touched on by Chike, but I guess if he still has some time, he might cycle back to that. Then he asks a further question, should that firm be spending more on income generation initiatives than income management? I think this is self-evident. There's a question from Isaac Idota. No, sorry, it's not a question, just a welcome. Sorry, please. Okay, so those are the questions that I have pending. Please, we welcome more for this all-important topic.
So let me start from the easier ones before I get to the one where I've been asked to reveal my trade secrets and then pack my bags and go back to whence I came. So investment. So when I was talking about a firm investing, right? It is important that you invest in your business. So what are you investing in? How to do business development. So maybe there's a reason why you go to a specific conference, right? If you think that conference will expose you to the right people, maybe you want to speak there, maybe you're paying money to sponsor the next SBL conference, and I welcome you all to do so in my capacity as chairman of the conference planning committee. Maybe you're looking to do that to expose your firm, and it's all very well. Now, so those are investments that you may want to make. Now, when I was speaking about investment and I'm cautioning against over-investing, I was actually talking in terms of, should a law firm invest in financial assets, invest in real estate, buy houses, invest in a bunch of other things? And my point was that it may be that it is prudent to make certain investments because those investments help you build up some cash or something you can convert to cash very easily that will come in handy during the rainy day, right? Or during those periods where you have cash flow challenges because your clients have not paid, but you have invoices out there, right? So those may be fine. But law firms can easily fall into the trap of putting so much money in investment in the name of the firm without really looking at whether those investments are, how should I say, are they the best use of those funds? Are those funds better off in the hands of the founder of the business, in the hands of the partners, in the hands of the sole practitioner to do some personal things outside of the firm? And all of these things are things you would require professional advice in relation to. And that's why I also said, who is keeping your account? You may be a sole practitioner, therefore, it may be that you cannot afford to hire an accountant or whatever, but you probably may be able to buy the services of one who's outsourced. You may be able to pool resources, as somebody said, share resources. 5 practices are in the same space, using the same accountant, etc., etc. So that's the distinction between investing inside the business and holding financial investments or real estate investments somewhere that do not really go to the essence of your business. Somebody said, should firms concentrate on income generation or income management? How do you make a profit? It's either you're making so much revenue and your revenue outweighs your costs and therefore there's profit, or in difficult times, you begin to look at your costs and you're saying, these costs are high, can I push them down? Is there a way that I can do certain things that I do wastefully now more efficiently? Should I begin to use artificial intelligence to do certain things? Do I really need this accountant, for example, or could I pool resources with somebody? Do I really need all this space by myself, or could I share it with someone else? Do I actually need a physical space? COVID-19 has taught us that all this while we used to think we needed physical space, beautiful offices. Perhaps you could do from home some of these things. Do I really need to travel when I can do conference calls? So some of those efficiency drives can bring down your cost so that even if your income does not increase, you're still more profitable than you were yesterday because you were managing costs. So it's a combination of cost management, increasing revenue that will get you to profitability. Someone says pricing strategies. There's no one size fits all. So foreign clients, there's no one size fits all, even in foreign clients. So sometimes you may find that there are cultural differences between certain clients, right? Sometimes it's even a geographical issue. In some parts of the world, people are more willing to pay advice than others. So you have to be sensitive to those. You have to seek advice from more experienced practitioners. Mentorship is a good idea. What do you think about this? I've been asked, I get called several times by people who say to me, oh, I've been asked to pitch for a work in this area. Can you give me guidance? You must, it's something that you learn over a period of time and you never learn it all. Seek out advice from experienced people, but very quickly, what sort of pricing strategies will there be? There'll be times where you're willing to, give up something for your client in order to get the work. Sometimes you're willing to grow with a client in exchange for a promise that when things get better, you get paid better, or you get paid for all those times you didn't charge them, etc., etc. I mean, it's difficult to sit here and say this is what the magic wand is, but it is important to know that there are resources on the internet, there are resources in books, and there are more experienced practitioners you can always call upon if you build relationships with them.
Okay, thank you so much again, Chike. And I'd like to steer your responses in the direction of perhaps giving some more insights into that startup or mid-sized law firm that's already been in operation. And then, are there any clues to funding? Are there any clues to investing in the law firm itself? If, for instance, the proprietor or the principal partner of that practice takes a look and sees that the majority of their income, the majority of their instructions comes from litigation or from real estate or from some particular field, is there any pointer, any conclusion that can be drawn by way of what to invest in and how to manage the income from that? Because from what you're saying, it's also important to take a step back and understand what is laying the golden egg for this practice of mine as an assistance or as a roadmap to knowing what to invest in. So you get money, you get paid money. What do you actually invest it on? So you have $1 million paid to you by that client. What determines what you invest it in? Is it your sense of yourself? Is it your colleagues who worked with you, for instance, as a question here says, do you use it to pay bonuses, or you spend it and just wait for the next income? How do you manage that matrix?
So I think the question you've asked, there are lots of things that are wrapped up in there, and they will be very difficult to take apart. But just at the end of the day, right, you must at any point in time be thinking strategically about where do I want this practice to go, right? Somebody invited me recently and said, my father was a lawyer. My wife is running my father's firm, but she too is thinking about retirement. None of my kids is a lawyer, but I want this firm that has my father's name to outlive me, right? Now, how that person runs that practice is a completely different thing from the person. So there's a certain level of sentimentality in this, and it is, I want this practice that bore my father's name to outlive me and whatever. Then the person's strategy is different. So you must have a strategy at any point in time. It may change. So if the bulk of my work comes from litigation, it may be that my strategy is, some people say, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. But there's a wise person that says, put all your eggs in one basket, then watch that basket dutifully and vigilantly. So you may decide that, you see, this litigation, I will die here. And therefore, you invest in looking for more and more in that space, because that's the space where I have devoted my career. That's where I'm known. That's where I've carved my niche. Or it may be a case of, I need balance, right? And if I need balance, perhaps I need to turn to someone else who has something to offer other than litigation and say, can we collaborate? Can we collaborate and form a partnership? Or can we have a loose alliance by which, as I get work in the non-contentious space, you are helping do it. As you get contentious work, I am helping do it. We're two separate practices, but people understand that we collaborate. So there are different strategies that you can adopt, but at every point in time, it's just to be very intentional about what you do and seek advice, seek professional help. Now, I think I've forgotten some of the other aspects of the question.
So how do you spend the money? Should you plow it into rewarding your people?
So fantastic question. Now, for litigation, for example, first of all, you ask yourself the question, where does the work come from? It may be that the work comes because of the reputation of the principal practitioner, in which case they may be able to afford, just, putting their name out there, right? It may be that it is because of the good work of the people that you've hired. And to the extent that it is from the good work of the people that you've hired, we have to remember that at the end of the day, what the lawyer sells is intellectual prowess of the lawyer themselves and the lawyers that work for them. Therefore, you must reward your people as generously as your heart allows you to, as generously as your conscience allows you to. Because happy people mean devotion, should, it may not necessarily always, but it should mean devotion to the business. It means that the person is working hard to bring in more business. Now, lawyers are notorious for, hugging the profits and believing that the people coming behind must, as we tend to hear, pay their dues. I've paid my dues. Because I've paid my dues, the people that work for me should suffer in penury. That is not a mindset that enables you run a successful financial practice. You should be as mindful of your people as the most important resource that you utilize in a professional services business where it is brain power. It is not the books on our shelves that we sell. It is not the beauty of our offices that we sell. All of those things are accessories. What we sell is the know-how in the brains of the people in our business and how we apply them based upon experience in solving client problems. So you should invest as much as possible of your profit in actually keeping your people happy, because that's the way you retain those people, motivate them to do more.
Very well. Not sure we have any more questions here. A lot are just people signing in. Okay, so I don't know if there are any last words that you might have, Chike, in the event of this. Will your presentations, will it be available by any chance, for instance, because I've seen questions to that effect as well?
Yes, I will email the presentation to the ICLE to circulate as appropriate.
Very well.
Final words. Final words for me is law is a vocation. Law is something that, let me put it this way, right? I remember, in law school, and I don't know whether they teach that now, but they teach you that, the gown that the lawyer wears, that there's a pouch behind the back in which the clients of old, slotted in the payment for lawyers. And it was frowned upon for lawyers to, discuss fees because that was infra dignitum, or whatever it is we say in lawyers.
Sorry, Chike, I'm afraid I have to cut you. No last words yet. I've seen tons of questions here. And if you permit me, I will just do a rapid fire and throw them at you. Some of them you've already addressed.
You're out of time.
Oh dear. Okay. Though I imagine that much of these questions have already been answered, really. So, for instance, should a law firm borrow to meet capital projects? Is VAT applicable? At what time do you stop sharing offices? Those are some of the kinds of questions that we have seen, but like I said, a lot of them have been answered by TK in the course of his presentation and responses.
Very quickly, should a law firm borrow to undertake capital projects? The question is, what is a capital project? If you mean, should you borrow to build a house? It goes back to my question of, what is that house for, right? A sustainable business is a business that at every point in time is able to pay its ongoing costs. So building houses may not necessarily be the best thing that a law firm should do, but it may be that in your peculiar situation, that makes sense. Generally speaking, it's probably not the most sensible. So just double check, seek financial advice. VAT, does it apply? Yes, it applies to the fees that we charge. When should you stop sharing resources? When your costs and your revenue, when you compare them, tells you that you will be profitable if you stop sharing resources. I was closing by saying that we were taught in law school very quickly, right? That lawyers, should be shy about fees. They slot money behind your back. You don't sue for your professional fees, and so on and so forth. So we're raised to be very shy and diffident when it comes to matters of money. And then when we hear sums of money mentioned, we get very excited and we don't get objective and business-like about those. And I think it is high time lawyers became sensitive to the idea that we run businesses and we require our numbers to add up. And when they don't add up, we need to do something drastic about it. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for taking question time, Kunle. Chike, brilliant presentation. What can I say? I mean, I think it was a great way to close the session, and it was very interactive, but very brilliant presentation, Chike, and you kept it very simple. Thank you very much for indulging us, and we hope that when we call you, you would be there to answer us once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, we'll go to the next session for this afternoon. It's right on the mark of time, so I'll just introduce Dr. Tomini Owolabi very quickly. Dr. Tomini Owolabi Tomini, an Eisenhower Fellow for Leadership, is the managing partner of Olaniwo Ajayi LP. He has been a mainstay in the oil and gas industry for about 30 years. And in this time, he has gained significant experience and earned his place at the front seat of significant developments in Nigerian oil and gas industry. Having built a reputation for simplifying complex commercial deals, he's now relied on by international oil companies, indigenous oil companies, national oil corporations, and international law firms to navigate the legal aspects of complex oil and gas projects that involve the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Tomini's experience spans the disparate yet interconnected fields of project finance, capital market regulatory, mergers and acquisitions, oil and gas financings, and asset acquisition. Beyond being a trusted legal advisor, his clients have come to rely on his ability to give practical advice that meets business needs, a skill he has developed first with an MBA from the Manchester Business School and a doctorate in business administration from the University of Liverpool. He continues to shape the Nigerian legal industry, and until recently, he was chair of the Nigerian Bar Association's SBL Subcommittee on Banking and Finance, where he shaped the MBA's intervention to upskill lawyers in the banking and finance sectors. It is my pleasure this afternoon to welcome Dr. Tomini Owolabi. Tomini will be speaking on building a law firm brand. Thank you very much. Tomini, the floor is yours.
You're on mute, Tomini. You're on mute.
Wow. Okay. Hello. Something is okay. I hope it stays unmuted. I get automatically
I can hear you.
Muted. Okay. I think it's fine now. It's my pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. Tobina, my apologies for I should have signed in much earlier, but I had some earlier meetings. But it's great to be here, and I'm happy that I caught the end of Chike's brilliant session. And as people have asked, I will also look out for the slides. This afternoon, first and foremost, disclaimers. I'm not an expert or a guru on branding, so I don't know what the expectations are. But what I intend to do this afternoon is to share observation and experience, and then we'll all ask questions and hopefully we'll all learn together this afternoon. I've got a few slides to share, so let me see if I can get that on now. Just a few minutes. Let me see if I can get that. Just 1 minute. Can you see my beautiful branding slides? If you can, please.
Well branded, automatically you can see it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I thought since I was going to be talking about branding today, I needed to pay attention to my slides. Okay, so building a law firm brand, and once again, thanks for the privilege of sharing this afternoon. When we talk about brands, I think the first place to go, and I don't know what the protocol is today. Is it possible for me to ask questions? I know we have probably close to 700 people on, so maybe it may not be practical for me to ask questions and make this interactive. Or maybe at the end of it, we can take questions. But as a starting point,
Yes, Tommy, I'll just say that they'll be dropping questions on the Q&A box, and then Kunla Jabe will moderate the question time when we get there. But you have Dioye on, and you have Kunle on, and also Ntebike. So if you have specific questions that you want them to comment on, then that's fine.
Okay. So I've got a slide on that has a number of logos on. And I just wanted to find out if it was a normal class, my question would be, how many of these brands do we recognize? I've got 10 logos set out on this slide. And I just wanted us to spend a few seconds to look at this. I don't know how many of us are familiar with all these logos or these brands. And the question is, what are these brands? These brands, interestingly, Thomas Reuters run a survey every year, and they've been running it for about 12 years now, where they try to determine the best legal brands in the world. And so they do a ranking of all the legal brands in the world, and they come up with a list of the brands, legal brands in the world, and they rank them. The list you're looking at are the 10 top most legal brands in the world, according to Thomson Reuters, for the year 2022. Usually they release their reports at the beginning of the year, and typically they look backwards, looking at last year, 2021. These brands are the top 10 legal brands in the world for the year 2021/2022. Now, in carrying out this survey, what was Thomson Reuters looking at? What was the focus? How did they determine that these brands are the 10 best brands in the legal world? First question they were interested in was brands that are top of mind for clients. They surveyed about 2,000 leading corporates in the world. And what they were interested in were law firms that were top of mind in terms of awareness. Second thing that they were concerned about was a favorability factor. How favorable were those firms to the participants in the survey? A third consideration was how likely are the corporates able or willing to consider those law firms for multi-jurisdictional litigation work? And finally, how likely are the participants of the survey likely to consider those firms for multi-jurisdictional transactions? And so the results that we're looking at means that these firms, these 10 firms, according to the survey, are the firms that were more likely to be top of mind amongst the 2,000 leading corporates in the world. And so when we talk about brands, what are we talking about? And I should mention that Baker McKenzie was top of the list. And Baker McKenzie has been top of the list for the 12 years that this survey has been running. And so this evening, question is this: why is it, and I don't know how many of us know Baker McKenzie, how many of us have interacted with Baker McKenzie. I want to believe that a lot of us on this call recognize the brand, are aware of the brand, and possibly may have interacted with the brand. But according to Thomson Reuters, and this is one of them, it's a respected survey, Baker McKenzie for the last 12 years has been the best legal brand in the world. So question today that I want us to consider together is, why is Baker McKenzie the best brand in the world? And the first place to start, especially since we're considering the topic, building a law firm brand, is what are brands? If we were in normal class, this would be the right juncture for me to ask questions. What are brands? And I'm sure you're looking at another slide with your favorite designer labels and designer names. And question I have for us is, what emotions or what comes to mind when we see all these logos and these names? I'm sure a lot of us, for some people, this is everything they wear or use is around these logos. For some, it's aspirational. But the point is this: when we see these logos, take for instance Rolex. When you talk about wristwatches in the world and you mention the name Rolex, something comes to mind. And that's the question we're trying to discover today when we ask the question, what are brands? What are we looking at? Because all these names that I have got on the screen are brands. But when we talk about the word brand, what comes to mind? And someone has defined, there's a gentleman called Tom Godwin, he's defined brands as essentially patterns of familiarity, meaning fondness and reassurance that exist in the mind of people. And so when we talk about patterns of familiarity, so brands are, so for instance, going back to this slide, Hermes, a lot of us on this call are familiar with the name Hermes, or we are familiar with the name Rolex or Tiffany & Co. We're familiar with that name. So there's familiarity, but it's not just familiarity, but the brand creates meaning, fondness in your mind. And so it's not just being familiar with the name of the brand, but the brand stands for something in our mind. So when we hear the name Rolex or we see the Rolex crown, it creates a meaning. And not just a meaning, and for a lot of people, a fondness. People want to, own a Rolex. People want to, spend a lot of money. I'm told since the pandemic, Rolex has been one of the most sought after quality good in the world. As a matter of fact, there's scarcity of Rolex in the world today, and the prices have gone very high. But there's something about what's driving that hunger, that drive, that pursuit, why people are ready to commit a lot of money to that product, is because there's a pattern of familiarity, meaning, and fondness that's been created in the minds of people when they hear the name Rolex and when they own a Rolex. And so for me as a lawyer, what does the word brand mean? It connotes two things for me, listening to and using the Rolex example. First of all, it's an intangible collection of perception in the consumer's mind about a product. And so Rolex, when we hear the name Rolex, something comes to mind. We associate something with that name. And that perception, it's intangible, you can't lay hands on it, but it sits in your mind, it creates a sense of quality, it creates a sense of fondness that is in your mind. But beyond the perception of the service or the product, a brand also is a promise made to customers or clients that their expectations of their service or product will be met. And so take, for example, the example of a Rolex. We all know that when you get a Rolex, and if it's not a fixed Rolex, You have a wristwatch that will serve you for life. You have a wristwatch that will serve you for life. So it's not just a perception in the mind of the buyer, but when you eventually take a step to acquire the good or the service, there's an expectation that is being met. And so when we talk about branding, a lot of people think of branding in terms of logos, websites, business cards. That's not what branding is. And so people want to start a law firm, and the first thing they think about is, what's going to be my logo? What's going to be my website? What color should be on my business card? I'm not saying those things are not great things. They're very important things to think about, but that is not your brand. A brand is an experience. So when we talk about the law firm Baker McKenzie, and for those of us who know that firm, it is not the colors, the red colors that makes Baker McKenzie the best brand in the world. It is actually the experience that the over 2,000 corporate leaders have had of that brand that makes that brand a worthy brand to be named the best legal brand for 12 years consistently. The mistake a lot of people make is that they think that the way to build a brand is get an artist, get a consultant, and they will knock a brand together for you. That's not it. So brand or a brand is not a name. It's not a name. It's not a logo. And so Coca-Cola today is one of the world's most recognized brands. We may be calling it something else. It is an experience behind Coca-Cola that makes Coca-Cola a worldwide brand that everyone in the world recognizes today. It's not the logo. It's not the Coca-Cola ribbon. It's not the colors. We may have painted Coca-Cola. The Coca-Cola logo could be blue for whatever it could have been purple. But the experience behind Coca-Cola is what has made us associate that red ribbon as being a brand that quenches thirst. It's the experience and not the colors. So your brand is not your name, it's not your logo, it's not your colors, it's not a tagline or a slogan. People are quick to create a tagline or a slogan. And very importantly, and I want us to take this away, if you don't take anything away, your brand is not what you say it is. So some people say my brand is the qualitative legal service. It is not what you say it is. It is actually what you are, really. That is your brand. And so what if you say your brand is X, but you are manifesting Y? Your brand is not X, it's Y. So your brand is not social media postings. A lot of people spend a lot of energy trying to create a facade or an image that they are not on social media. That's not the brand. It's not your website. It's not business cards, signs, and brochures. So, Henry Ford said something which is very, 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 very seminal. He says you can't build a reputation on what you are going to do. Your reputation is based on what you are doing today. And so when we talk about branding and going back to those examples of Rolex, Fendi, Baker McKenzie, what makes them recognizable brands today? It's not because of something they are going to become. It's not because of the colors that they've colored their logo. It's not because it is actually because of who they are. And so what is your brand? So when we think and we begin to talk about branding, first and foremost, your brand is who you really are, is your identity. And so we're talking about legal law firms today. If you're a law firm that has a reputation of winning every case that comes across the path of a law firm, that's your identity. Now, that identity is your brand, is who you are. But, people may not know that you win every case that comes across the door of your firm. And so you need to create an image for the world, which is they get to know that you are a firm that wins every case that comes across your door. And so on the transactional side, so maybe you've got the best finance skills in the world. Maybe you've got the best M&A skills in the world. Maybe you write the best legal opinions in the world. That's who you really are. But that identity plus the image, which is projecting that identity to the whole world, that is your brand. The mistake people often make is this: they don't add identity with image. So some people are great, they've got great skills, but they are not projecting the image. And so people don't get to see the brand. And so with time, nobody gets to know the brand, and that institution does not grow. For some people, they don't have the identity, but they are creating an image that is not real. Such a firm, will make noise, win some instruction, but when clients have had experience of that institution, they realize that this brand or this image is fake. And so when we talk about building a law firm brand, it is having the right identity and projecting the image of that identity. That's what makes you a brand. The challenge with a lot of people is that they focus on the image. Some people even get branding experts, people to make them look good. But the reality is this: clients are not fools. The whole world is not fools. When they engage with you and they realize that there's no substance there, the reason why people go back to Rolex is because the identity, what Rolex promises, the promise will always be kept. And so the identity was created before the image was created. And so identity plus image equates the brand. And that's why Rolex, though being one of the best wristwatches in the world, every time you take a nice magazine at your airport lounge, you still see Rolex being advertised. Why? It's because they've got the identity, but that identity also needs to be projected. So the first thing is you need the identity, who you really are, but that who you are needs to be projected so that people will see the brand. So Larry Ackman said something very seminal. He says, identity is the cause, brand is the effect, and the strength of the former influences the strength of the latter. And so your brand is a result or a consequence of your identity. And this is very, very important, and we need to get this right. It's the identity that feeds the brand. You can get the best consultant in the world. If you don't have it, it will crash. And so while we're looking at it, the first thing we need to bear in mind is that your brand is a projection, it's an image of who you really are. So it's important that we get this in mind. And why is branding very important? Steve Forbes said something. He says your brand is the single most important investment you can make in your business. Why is it important? The first thing why brand is important for lawyers especially is that these days people have too many choices and too little time to make those choices. And so, especially in Nigeria produces the largest number of lawyers on the continent. And the way the legal practice is in Nigeria, you can get called to back tomorrow, and you put a signboard on the door of a room tomorrow, and you've got a law firm. And so there are too many choices. And so it is important that you begin to differentiate yourself in the midst of this jungle of legal providers. And I dare say that the fact that you're differentiating yourself does not mean that others will not make money. There's a whole wide spectrum of what we all can be doing. The challenge with a lot of us in Nigeria is that we like copy and paste. That person is doing this, we must do it the same way. So there are so many, clients have too many choices now, and it's important. Branding helps clients make clear, easy decisions. So we need to differentiate yourself. And we are also realizing that legal offerings have this similar quality and features. For a lot of firms, a lot of the time, I'm sure some of our colleagues on the call can attest to this. We get a request for an opinion or for a piece of work from our colleagues outside of the country. And by the time you put in a quote for the work, they will tell you that a firm of comparable skill and level is willing and able to do it for probably half of the price you're quoting. And so, because the services we are providing as lawyers now, at some end, at some spectrum, is becoming commoditized. It's important for us as lawyers to begin to think about, how do I differentiate myself in this jungle? The other thing we need to understand about why you need to pay attention to your branding. So Bernard, please, I'm not taking note of time. I don't know if there's someone who can let me know if I'm halfway through my presentation, or let me know what time I've got left, please.
Okay.
I need that.
You have about 35 minutes left. So I mean, I think we allow about 15 minutes for question time. So you should have roughly 20 minutes left to conclude. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
That works.
So,
all right.
So good brands will attract customers, because brand creates an emotional connection to you. That's why some people have probably 20 Rolexes in their collection. Some of this, and that's why some people just collect some type of cars, because the brand creates an emotional connection. And it's the same with services. Some people will not talk to any other lawyer just because they have tied into a brand and they're connected with that brand. So it's important for you to pay attention to your branding, because branding creates an emotional connection. It builds trust and creates loyal clientele, and it creates clientele preferences. So once people identify with your brand, see your brand as the right one, it creates a preference. And that preference leads to more work, because anytime any other person is asking them for a reference, they just mention you. And so branding creates, increases business value. It increases profitability, because when you are well branded and you've differentiated yourself, you're even able to command a higher price than the next person, because people just stick with you because they're used to you. They don't even go somewhere else where they could possibly get a lower price. And when it is competitive, when people know that, okay, this person is good for this. So if you've created a brand as the best M&A firm in Nigeria, for instance, you can command your price. And there are firms in the US who are known for M&A. And so you talk about Kaglen and Ellis, for instance, who are private equity specialists. They will ask for anything in the world and people will pay, because they've created a brand specific for that area of work. And so your branding helps easy recognition. It helps you in facing competition, because when you branded yourself in an area, you master that. And so when people are trying to get into that space, you are a leader in that space. On the employee side, branding also helps employees, because it builds a sense of pride and satisfaction in employees. A number of us understand our market, right from year one university. A number of students are yearning to get into the door of a number of firms. Why? Because those firms have built a reputation and a brand in some areas. And so it helps build pride and job satisfaction. So employees actually even take their work more seriously, because of the fact that the brand is respected, the brand is distinguished, and it also attracts good employees. So what are we talking about this afternoon? How do we build brand? And that takes me to the word branding. What does branding mean? And branding, according to a definition, is a perpetual process of identifying, creating, managing the cumulative assets and actions that shape the perception of the brand in stakeholders' mind. And what I like to emphasize in this definition is the word perpetual. Some people think that branding is a project, okay? I get a consultant, they come in, they look at me, they design my logo, design my card, they change my website, and that's it. No. People who are successful at creating brands that impact, they have an ongoing strategy to refresh, to renew, and to improve the perception in the mind of stakeholders. And so when we're talking about branding or building a law firm brand, it is not something that starts in a month and ends in the next month. You must, and I'm sure for a number of my colleagues on the call whose brands have become very recognized in country and out country, you realize that there's no end to the process. You keep working at it. There's no end to it. And it's a accumulation of assets and actions. And that's why we're saying it's not just about logo, it's everything, the way you walk, the way you write, the way you speak to clients, the way you attend meetings, the way you show up at meetings. It's a accumulation of actions. And it's that accumulation of actions that shapes the perception of your brand in the mind of stakeholders. When we're talking about stakeholders here, we're not just talking about clientele, clients as stakeholders. We're talking about potential employees, because we are talking about the general public in itself. Some people may not hire you to provide legal service to them, but they may be pointers to your brand to other people and say, oh, yes, and you're looking for someone to help you in oil and gas. Oh, these people, they do a great work. Talk to them. And I can tell you how many times, I've gotten a referral just by somebody saying, oh, I've met this person before, and not necessarily for that. So when we talk about stakeholders, it's not just potential clients, it's potential clients, potential employees, potential everybody. So branding is an ongoing process and involves so many things. And, Jeff Bezos, we all know him. He says a brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. You earn reputation by trying to do hard things well. So you keep working at it. It's a hard thing, but you keep working at it. And the other thing I like to emphasize, a brand is a promise to your clients, a promise of quality, consistency, competency, and reliability. And that's why it is perpetual. You don't stop at it. And you don't cut corners. And you don't forgive when things drop below your expectation. It's perpetual. It's a promise to your client, and consistency is at the heart of it. And that's what creates good brand: quality, consistency, competency, and reliability. So that your clients know that when we call you the next time, you will provide the right level of service. But if the service you provided 2 months ago is different from the service you provided last month, and this month, okay, it's better, then the next month, it dips a bit, you're not creating a consistent brand. And so it's a promise to your client. So how, which is what this is all about, how do I create a brand, a legal brand that works for me? And this is one of the slides I wish I could hear people talk about. If your business, which is your firm now, was a car, what make and model will it be and why? And I've got 6 cars on the screen. I wish people could talk, what make and model will your business be? So today you've got a firm, and if you want to represent your firm by one of these cars, is it a Kia Picanto? Is it a Geely? Or what do they call it? I think they sell it. I don't know which company sells that now. Or is it a G-Wagon or a Rolls Royce? So what is your car? What is your business? And now, please don't misunderstand me. It doesn't mean the fact that your car is a Picanto, it doesn't make it useless. It's not bad in itself. Kia sells probably a lot more cars than all these big cars, and they make money. But that is
for some reason I cannot hear it. Okay. Sorry,
Hello?
they're responding on the chat box. If you look at the chat box, they're responding to your question.
Oh, okay. I think the challenge is okay. Some people are responding. Benz, G-Wagon, Mercedes. Okay, I love these people. Okay, Mercedes Benz. Okay, good. Nobody's even going roller. Range Rover. Okay, good. Okay, so, but the question is this, where am I going with this? Every brand, and so when we look at a collection of the competitive landscape, we all represent different things. And why am I saying this? This is important because you determine what you want to be known as. And I must warn that if you decide that you want to be a Kia Picanto, it is not bad in itself. It just means that you are serving a type of customers. Because Kia Picanto has a need and a service it is meeting. And so, yes, I see people want to be Mercedes-Benz, a G-Wagon, and the Range Rover. Great. But for you to be a Range Rover or a G-Wagon, of course, you know that a lot more is required to build a Range Rover, and a lot more is required to get a Range Rover going. And so the first thing when you want to build your brand is to do what I call a reality check. Yes, I want my brand to be a Range Rover, but where am I? What am I? What is my brand like today? Is it a Danfo? Is it a Toyota? Or is it a Range Rover? It is an appreciation of what I call the brand gap that begins to put things in perspective for you. You see, a lot of the time people start with the end in mind, and without necessarily doing a proper and a clear audit of where they are today. And so you must understand that what is my brand gap? Yes, I want to be a Range Rover. I want to be a G-Wagon, but I'm a Kia Picanto today. What does it take for me to progress from a Kia Picanto firm to become a Range Rover firm? Now, but I have said earlier on that we all cannot be a Range Rover firm. It would be just the wrong thing to do, because there are segments of the society, of the market, that a Kia Picanto is selling to, and they're making lots of money. At some point, I don't know whether that's still the case, Kia sold the most cars in terms of number in the world, and they're making money. And so, first of all, is what is your brand gap? Where do you want to be, and where are you today? You need to do that, check. And so you start with a brand audit. Where do I want to be? And bearing in mind what I've defined as a brand. Your brand is not your logo. So it's not just saying, okay, I'm reviewing, is my color right? Is my website right? No, it's an audit of, okay, so who am I as a firm? What am I even projecting today? So start with a brand audit, identify your brand gap. So what's the gap between where you want to be and where you are? Then you need to evolve a brand strategy. We'll talk about that more. Implement it. And as I said earlier on, it's about a perpetual work. You review, adapt, and renew it. So you keep going. And so how do you build it or improve your brand? The first thing to do is to start with your why. So either as a group of partners or as an individual sole proprietorship, I don't know how you're structured. Why? Your why is very important, because we all cannot be the same. And that's the mistake a lot of people make. There's some spectrum of the practice that is very glamorous. Yeah, some people, senior advocate of Nigeria, you go to court to slay everybody, but not everybody is cut out for that. Some people are doing, a lot of big transactions, but not everybody is cut out for that. So you must start with a sincere and a clear assessment of what's my why. Yes, I'm in law, but why am I in this law? Why is this law firm existing? What are we out here for? Because people are for different things. Some people are purely on the contentious side, and there's nothing to do with the transaction side for them. Some people are purely for human rights defense. Some people are purely for oil and gas. And so what's your why? And when you understand your why, you begin to then define your ideal clientele. So the clientele I'm looking for are people of this range, because the people who will buy Range Rover are not the people who buy Kia Picanto. And so you begin to, when you understand your why, you begin to define who your clientele is, define your market, then understand your unique value proposition, your brand promise. What is it? And that's why I kept saying that your branding is not about colors. It's about what you're delivering for your clients. So, and I will talk more about that. Discover your firm's value, identify your brand voice. Some people, and we can illustrate, some years ago, lawyers must be gra-gra, make noise, bring the whole house down. And some people are like that, and they're winning cases on that basis. Some people are more circumspect with their brand voice. They're more calmer. They project calmness and assurance. Why some people? They project, the whole world must come to an end. So you need to understand what your brand voice is, and then write a brand statement and communicate your brand. But a few things I like to emphasize, because I think this is at the heart of branding. And I think as a firm, as my firm, this is what we, emphasize. Why should someone come to me and not, Chike spoke to us a few minutes ago, and not, go to, Templars? Why should somebody go to Alukoyebode and not Udodoma? What is it? And all of us, for us to build brands, because I understand, and my view is this, that the legal market in Nigeria, we're scratching the surface. We're not just there. And as much as Nigeria is producing a lot of lawyers every year, we all can make loads of money in this market if we all can be innovative, creative, and not copy and paste. And so in branding, you must understand what's your unique value proposition, which is the core benefit or solution that differentiates your service from the competition and positions you as the best possible option in the market for that. And there are nuances. So we all can be doing finance, but there can be an area of finance that you are the best in, and you position yourself as being the best in that. We all can be doing oil and gas. We all can be doing contentious work. And you just say, no, this area of contentious work, commercial litigation is my expertise, my unique value proposition. And as I said, I like to spend a bit more time on this. What makes your firm different from anyone else in your geography? If you cannot answer that question, you're not building a good brand. You must be able to answer that question. And that's the challenge. Don't just copy. Don't just look like every other person. If you say you want to be a Range Rover, then what's the unique thing about me in this area? If I need a lawyer, why should I call your firm? If you can't answer that, why should I call your firm? I'm not the other firm. If you can't answer that, then you have not started building your brand. There's something about you. There's something about you that you can tell someone that, okay, if you need a lawyer, you should come to me because of 1, 2, 3. Explain why a client should hire you and not the next lawyer. What is your message? What is your unique story? What is it that you are giving to a client? Because clientele is about pain points, it's about solving their problems that the next man cannot give. And so to build and that's, if you look at all the top brands in the world, Coca-Cola, Rolex, name it, it's about supplying something, providing an experience that is unique to them. Yes, there are several watchmakers in the world, but a Rolex is a Rolex. And that's why for most people, Rolex is what they give you when you are 10 years or 20 years anniversary. There's something about it. There's a message to it. There's something that they're talking about. And so you must be able to define what your unique value proposition is. And that's why Baker & McKenzie, for instance, globally. Now, if you go to specific markets, so if you go to the UK, for instance, or you go to the US, or you go to some jurisdiction, Baker & McKenzie may not probably be the best brand in the US, or if you take the US or the UK. But the reason why globally Baker & McKenzie is the first to come to mind is because they have differentiated themselves as a global firm. And they were one of the first firms that they were, Baker & McKenzie was the first Western firm to get a license to practice law in China. Because they began to, years back, they said they wanted to be known as an international firm. And so they branded themselves, they differentiated themselves. Yes, several firms provide international service, but they have uniquely created a mind that we are taught when it comes to international work. So Baker & McKenzie's key difference is that, they say they were born global. And that's a unique value proposition that makes them recognized as the best global brand, legal brand. If you go to the US today, I wish I had time to share another table about how the top 10 revenue firms globally last year. Kirkland and Ellis, hit the 4 billion mark consistently for the last 2 years. And they have been on the growth trajectory for the last 13 years. So there are other firms that are doing well, and Baker & McKenzie, but the truth is that the reason why globally they are known is because that is their unique selling proposition. And so The first thing you need to define, as I said, is, and I've walked through this, I need to begin to round up, is what is the unique thing you're selling, your identity. Make sure you have it. Don't just speak about it. You can't build a reputation around what you're going to do. You have it, your processes, the way you do your work. Create the identity that you want to be. You don't call yourself a Range Rover when you're a Kia Picanto. People will find you out. Don't say you're a G-Wagon when you're a Geely. People will, once they see the car, they will say, is this a joke? So spend time to build a Range Rover and then project the image of a Range Rover. And in projecting the image of a Range Rover, you need to position your brand. How? Prospective client messages. How do I speak to prospective clients? The way you talk to prospective clients is different from the way you talk to existing clients. The messaging is different. A lot of the time, people speak to prospective clients the way they speak to existing clients. It's a different way you speak to them. And so your messaging must speak to prospective clients, must speak to existing clients. Existing clients have tested you, they know you, they have brand loyalty. But a prospective client is taking a risk at you. So how do you communicate your brand to those people? Employee messaging is important. Prospecting employee messaging. How do you communicate to the community? A lot of us are spending money on CSR and things like that. We're communicating to them. We are trying to get people to see that our brand is human. Our brand is humane. Diversity is important to us. And so your referral sources, even how you communicate to ranking firms like Chambers, IFR, all those ones is important because that is projecting your brand. Now, as I said earlier on, your brand is not your logo, is not your name, but once you have determined what you are, your identity, and there are different identities. As I said, we don't have a lot of time today. I'm a Range Rover. And the Range Rover, what's Range Rover? Range Rover is comfort, Range Rover is prestige, Range Rover is class, Range Rover is reliability, Range Rover is smooth driving. And so in legal terms, what are you? I'm creating a brand that is reliable, that if you call me, I would be there to answer you. I'm creating a brand that no matter what time you're reaching out to me, I'll be able to answer you. I'm creating a brand that if you ask me a question, by the next day, the answer is on your table. I'm creating a brand that every document that comes out of my stable, there are no typos, because typos depict one thing. It depicts sloppiness. It depicts, lack of attention. And so when you've determined what your brand is, then you begin to push it out. How do you push it out? Of course, your name, how you write your name, how your logo appears. Your logo cannot be, if you want to be international, a lot of people still put gavel and this on there. I don't know, it's a nice idea, but what are you trying to project with that? Are you trying to project a modern, forward-looking firm? Your color scheme, your typo, your fonts also speaks volume about what you're trying to project. Some fonts speak of playfulness. Some fonts speak of seriousness. Your marketing materials, your stationery. How does your stationery look? Your website. Are you just loading pictures from the internet onto your website? People won't take you seriously. They say this one is just copy and paste. So all these things begin to speak the image that you are and begins to project it. And as I begin to round up, take note your brand should be consistent across all touch points. So every time people get in contact with your brand, so when you meet a lawyer from your firm, they say, this person, because some people, you meet Nkechi today, Nkechi is good. They meet Chinyere tomorrow, Chinyere looks like from another firm. And they meet Shehu tomorrow, it looks like. Your people must speak consistency in their dressing, in their writing, in the way they engage. Every time someone engages with you, it must be the quality of your firm. So it can't be that your door is Picanto and the engine is Range Rover. It doesn't work that way consistently across all board. And that's why I say branding is a perpetual thing. You keep working at it. How your office looks, the get-up of your office. the way your logo, your stationery looks. Everything must speak the brand, the image you're trying to create. It must be clear in its messaging. It cannot be confusing. So sometimes you can't be saying, and that's why I said your brand voice, you must determine it. Some people are, we all know ourselves as lawyers, some people are, they make, when they arrive in a place, everybody knows they've arrived. They know barrister, somebody has come, because, they make all the noise. Some people, they get to a place, they speak their English, and everybody's calm, and they go. You must be clear in your messaging. You can't speak this today. If what you want is, if you are determining your brand is the aggressive type, and there's nothing wrong in it, be consistent and be clear in your messaging. Then your branding must be realistic for your target audience. Don't try and, be trying to sell Range Rover to an audience that can only afford Picanto. You're just wasting your time. You have wasted money. And key and very, very important is your branding to aim to differentiate you. And this is where a lot of us are lazy. We rather copy, rather go to someone else's. Most of the people, when they want to write a website, what do? They go to other people's websites. You should start with a blank piece of paper. What do I want to project? I'm not saying it's good to look at what competition is doing, but you don't look at what competition is doing to drive what you will want to do. You're looking at what competition is doing so that you can affirm the fact that you're different. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the red ocean, blue ocean strategy. A lot of us need to begin to think blue ocean, which is the red ocean, the fish, that's where all the fishes are. We're just killing each other over small food. You need to begin to think of how to differentiate yourself. And as a roundup, your brand must clearly develop the message. Then confirm your brand's credibility in the marketplace. Always make sure that your brand is being viewed right in the marketplace. Make sure that your brand emotionally connect with a target. Your brand is an emotional thing. Mention Rolex, mention Coca-Cola, mention one of these other names. It creates an emotional feel. And that's what you should try to achieve with your brand. And let your brand, don't have a brand for just the sake of having a brand. It is about business. Your brand must motivate purchase. And that's why the 4 factors that Thomas Reuters considers in selecting the leading legal brands for the year. 4 points. Number 1 is top of mind, so people must know about you. Number 2 is favorability. They must be likely disposed to you. But number 4 and 5 is a key one. They should consider you for multi-jurisdictional work. So if your brand is not making people consider you for work, then there's a disconnect. People can just, and I like his brand, I like him, he's nice, this looks nice, and they don't purchase, then there's a disconnect. The brand must motivate purchase. Finally, your brand should create user loyalty. I think I've spoken enough. We can take questions and flesh it out from there. Thank you. I hope I have made your time on this worthwhile.
Dominic, I'll let you know after question time. Kunle, are you there? Is Kunle there?
I just wanted to say, Tomini, that I like the brand in the picture you were projecting when we don't see your video.
Okay.
Chike, would you like to throw in a comment while we're at it? Just on his presentation or any questions?
No, I thought it was fantastic. But I guess one question, Tomini, is when we talk about consistency and reliability, at the end of the day, we're humans, right? And there'll be times when you fail. How do you manage the brand and manage the loyalty of the client when you have underperformed the promise that your brand represents?
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to go with that first, or you want to?
Would you mind if I just very quickly bring to your attention a couple of questions? First of all, thank you so very much, Tony, for this wonderful presentation. I think I have found it extremely insightful. And I believe that the audience, by the ton of questions that have been directed at you, they've also found it very useful. Now, I'll take some rapid fire questions in the first instance, in no particular order. There's a question here about how do you balance branding and in such a way and manner that it doesn't
We lost it.
Yeah, we lost him.
Okay, maybe I should
you could take Chike's question first.
Chike's question. So, and I think, Chike, the challenge with us as service providers, unlike product manufacturers. Product manufacturers, you produce a phone, and if there's a problem, you can send it back. Then I give you another one. Legal service is slightly different, and depending also on the nature of the legal service. Of course, there's a contention side, there's the advisory side, and there's a transactional side. And different implications are thrown across that. Now, as you said, first of all, let me say that how do we minimize the occurrence of dropping the ball? There's something which I studied when I did my MBA, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, people use in manufacturing, which is a total quality management process. It's about process. And if we have a process in-house that quickly ensures that we do a quality check before work gets delivered to a client, it begins to minimize the occurrence of balls being dropped. But when balls have been dropped, the first thing I tell people, or we try to do, is to admit that a ball has been dropped. It's a lot of the time when you try to, the longer you're trying to say to defend yourself or justify yourself, the deeper the hole you're digging. We would first admit quickly that something is wrong and offer, depending on the nature, to deal with it. And dealing with it also oftentimes may be, not even collecting a fee for the service provided. It may be being able to offer something to the client on an extended basis at a discounted rate or no fee. And so, and it would also be having a process where a senior partner or, is able to step in, do a visit, call to explain and admit and walk the client through the process. So what I would say is this: I agree with you, Chike, balls get dropped, but the key is to admit quickly that there's an issue and then try and fix it.
Thank you. Kunle, you're back. Unmute yourself, Kunle.
Thanks a lot for that, Tommy.
Okay, I'm afraid I can't see the other questions here, but the last point that I saw was whether or not branding would in any way affect the obligations that lawyers have under the RPC. There was also a question about virtual law firms, whether that in any way can assist with branding. I guess a further question to ask is, how does that small startup law firm or mid-sized firm, how does it fit into this? Because I also didn't hear Tomini use the example of Keke Napep. Would your brand come across as Keke Napep, for instance?
Okay. Lots of questions in that. For me, I think these are broad principles. And the broad principles is that no matter where you play, Brand loyalty is about consistency of quality. And as I said, yes, I used Picanto, which was my own attempt to be at the Kakena PEP level. But the point is this, irrespective of the level you are, the only way to distinguish yourself is to provide the quality for your client group. I know when we were in school, or some of us are interfaced with lawyers who don't have offices, who wake up one morning and they're ambulance chasing and go to court to try and get a customer. Even at that level, what distinguishes one lawyer from the other is the ability to deliver solution to their client group at a level that minimizes the pain points. So I would say that you may not have a fancy office and a fancy logo or fancy letterhead, but even at the base, a letterhead, how you write your letter, how no matter how small your firm is, nothing stops you from beginning to lay a foundation of cleanliness, decency, and some measure of consistency in the quality you're trying to deliver. Especially these days where, desktop editing is available to everybody. And so I just want to say that the principles that I've discussed applies irrespective of the level of the market you're playing at.
Okay, there's also a question here. Thank you so much. There's also a question here about how do you square branding, or how do you cycle branding with the well-known difficulties of operating a business in Nigeria, electric power problems, rising cost of diesel, traffic, and so many of the doing business problems that each and every one of us is grappling with. I'll leave the answers to you.
Okay. First of all, everyone faces those challenges, and so to the extent that we all face those challenges, those are competitive landscape we all need to deal with. And one of the things I was taught as a student on strategy is in strategy you do two things. First of all, you do an internal analysis of yourself, and secondly, you do an environmental analysis of yourself. And so, what is the area I'm living in? What's the economic situation? What are the realities? Because those realities are the realities that cut across the board. Now, so once you've done that analysis, when we do your audit of where you are also will take into consideration the difficulties that you're facing. And so you must strategize to deal with those difficulties, to be able to deliver at a level that would project the brand you want to project. And so, say for instance now, you probably need things filed or things delivered at quickly. And we all know that bikes is a problem, petrol is a problem, traffic is a problem. You must evolve a process to ensure that brand promise is kept at all times. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about processing. Yes, Nigeria is difficult, but people are getting things done in this market. It's about innovation, it's about thinking, it's about processing. A lot of the time, we just start an office and we are not evolving process. One thing I've realized in managing a business is that the work of a lawyer is you ask yourself, is it 50% writing opinions and drafting agreement? No. I think it's probably 70% solving all these other issues that will make my opinion get delivered on time in a manner that suits my client's needs. And so if you know all the law in the world, but your opinions are delayed, you can't deliver it on time, or there's a problem, then there's a problem with you, because we need to understand that we are running a business. When I dreamt of becoming a lawyer, I thought it was a very noble, profession, vocation. I want to solve everybody's problem. But I realized soon that it's about business, and businesses strive. What makes the business next door better than the other one is the ability to evolve a process that would outdo the competition. And so, yes, Nigeria is tough, but ladies and gentlemen, people are surviving and they're thriving in Nigeria. How are they doing it? Find out how you can do it for your legal business. It's about processing. And it's about also ensuring that you invest in your business. A lot of the time, I know times are hard, but ladies and gentlemen, sometimes you need to defer the benefits of living a great life by investing in your business, investing in technology, investing in systems that will make your business deliver at that high rate. Because truth is that technology is making things happen. You know, so it may not be a very complex technology, maybe something simple. So Nigeria is tough, but there are systems, processes, thinking, investments that can make those things easier for us. And as a startup, I know it's tough, and that's why, you know, please don't misread this. A lot of the time, a number of people are starting up without necessarily being ready to start up. I don't know if that's making sense. Sometimes you need to take time. Don't take the plunge. I know, you know, sometimes we're eager to, okay, let me go and start my own thing. Sometimes you need to build a base so that you can create and deliver at the level you ought to be delivering. Otherwise, you'll be struggling for life. So, you know, take your time and work somewhere else or come up with a partnership that can pull resources together to deliver at the level that's right. Because if you start up when you're not ready, then you will just be grappling for life.
Okay, now a question just to take ourselves back. Why does all this matter at all for lawyers? Why does branding matter? And what, at the end of the day, we're in this business to service our clients. What is the expectation that we are supposed to be able to deliver with branding? And does it really matter to clients? I don't know if you could perhaps
I think
look at that again, just so that we are clear. Why does it matter at all? And what's the benefit to my client or to any client?
Okay, so let's go back to my definition of branding. As I said, branding is not your logo, it's not your website, it's not your marketing. Branding is who you are. And so who you are, does it matter to your client? I believe so. Who am I as Olaniwa Ajayi? You know, so the firm Olaniwa Ajayi, if you ask me about my unique value proposition, which is who I am, my identity, does it matter to my client? Yes, it does. Because that is the promise that my client is buying into. So it's that image, that thing. So does it matter to client? It doesn't. The client doesn't wake up one morning thinking, okay, what is the Olaniwa Ajayi brand? No. So the client doesn't think about it in the sense of a brand, but the client perceives it. Because when I define brand, it is about perception in the mind. And so when a client is thinking of the next big refinery financing in Nigeria, and they are thinking, okay, who is going to help us? Does Olaniwa Ajayi come to mind? Why? That's where my brand works. Making Olaniwa Ajayi top of mind when a client is thinking about the next instruction. That's what my brand is. Not just top of mind, but somebody thinking about me favorably and say, okay, yeah, good. And somebody considering me for that role. That's what branding is. So is branding important to the client? Yes, they don't think about it as brand, but effectively the process of knowing about me. And so let's even talk about the contentious side. You know, for years in this country, the name Rotimi William is a brand. It's a brand. It connotes something. And so why did people go to him? Or why was he instructed? Because there's a perception in the mind that it was top of mind, it was favorable, and people were likely to consider him to help them with certain type of work. That's what branding is about. Now, you go about it not just by saying, okay, that's why I kept emphasizing, it's not about logo, it's not about colors, it's about your unique value proposition. then translating that identity into an image that people are seeing. And so, and I talked about the various ways people proposition new prospective clients, new clients. We can't see everything on this call, but people must, you may be the best thing in the world, but if you don't project it, people will know about you. But if you are projecting what you're not, then there's a problem. So you must be, then you must project. That's what branding is about. And that's why I said the branding formula is identity plus image equals brand.
Thank you so very much. There's also a question here, which is, are there external factors that work against raising a brand in law office practice? I'm not entirely clear what that might be, but I'll leave it to you, Tony, to perhaps try and unravel that as best as you can. Are there external factors that might militate against branding a law firm, for instance?
Okay, so as I said earlier on, my strategy class, they talked about two things. So you do a personal analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities you have, and the strength, your threats that's facing you. Then you also do an external analysis, your political situation, the economic situation, the social economic situation, and the technology around. Now, clearly, there are things that could be working against in trying to create a brand that are external to. Sorry, I think we've got.
I think somebody is unmuted, please. Please, could we all mute?
So there are external factors. So the fact that we live in Nigeria in itself can impact. Somebody said, "How do I NEPA? PA." So I have an instruction today. I promise the client I'm going to deliver early, but everything goes wrong. You want to deliver, so you need to buy generator, but diesel has become is not available. So those are external factors. The point I have made, however, is that those external factors exist, but you must evolve process to be consistent with your brand. That's the real work. That's why I said this thing is about perpetual work. There will be so many things. Some people even go against, they demarket you. There are situations where people will demarket you and say bad things about you. Some people may undercut you even, and say terrible things, but that's external. But you now need to find a way of proving those demarketing people wrong. That's the process.
Okay, now, yet another question that I need to put to you for the benefit of so many members of the audience who have joined us from outside Lagos. There's sometimes a perception that when we talk about branding and the rest like that, it's a purely Lagos phenomenon for the big firms who can afford it. So my practice is in Ibadan, it's in Oshogbo, it's in Mina, it's in Kontagora, and so on. Environmental factors make it quite dissimilar to what you have in Banana Island in Lagos. How far out of all what you have said can be adaptable to a practice, either a startup or a mid-sized firm that's in Mina or Shogbo, Enugu, and the rest, that they are not entirely commercial places like Lagos, but yet there is an intention to scale up and to, in a way, brand the practice as well. Are there any things that you can draw by way of nuggets for the benefit of our colleagues who are outside Lagos, who are not located or practicing in commercial centers like Lagos?
Okay, I think I've answered this question in another way earlier. You asked me the question, Keke na Pep. That's the way I look at this. And I reiterate that the principles we've talked about this afternoon cuts across whatever area you practice. And that's why when I showed the slide about the cars, I wasn't saying that Kia Picanto is bad in itself. But I'm just saying that whatever geographical region you find yourself, it is about a market. And bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about branding, we're talking about branding in the context of competition. You know, if you were the only law firm in your village, then no problem, go and sleep. But if you have to compete for work, then your brand becomes important. If there is the possibility that someone can consider someone else for any instruction in competition to you, then it's important that you take this, and it's the same principle. So whether it's Kotangura or it's Mina or it's Bauchi, it's the same thing, because you are competing for clientele. Now, this is about how the clientele perceive you, how they see you. So irrespective of, even if it's the most basic work, the most, people will say, if I go to this person, he would deliver more for me. And we compete on different basis. Some people compete on pricing. So it may be that, okay, you want to create an impression that if you come to me, I will give you the best legal service at the cheapest price or most affordable price. That is an image. And you just need to find, if that's you, that's your identity, then you need to find a way of projecting that image and letting the people that are your potential clients know about it. So it's not only about social media thing that we're talking about. No. So wherever you are, it's about, as long as, if you are the master and no, you can't compete for work, then no problem. Why care about what people perceive of you? But if people can go to someone else instead of you, then it's important for you to care about how your unique value proposition, how you create it, how you project it, and how people see it. So, and yes, what a Lagos firm may consider and the areas of pushing the brand may be different. And so a Lagos brand firm may do an arts show. You in Mina may not do an art show. A firm in Lagos may do a glossy brochure. You in Mina may not do a glossy brochure. But the point is that the broad principles are still the same. Do your brand gap. Where am I? Where do I want to be? Do your audit. What do I need to project? Do I have it? And how am I pushing this image? It's the same principles, irrespective of place. And that's one thing we need to also understand. For more matured markets, you take the UK, for instance. The UK publishes a number of publications, publishes the top 100 legal firms in the UK. Those top 100 firms, they're not small firms, though. They are big firms. So yes, we hear about the Magic Circle, Linklaters, Freshfields, Allen Overy. There are the silver shoe firms that are doing very well. Probably some of them making more money than the Magic Circle. But there are now even regional firms that are doing a lot of work. And they are well structured, well organized, have adapted technology, and they're not London firms. And so what we need to do, and that's the other thing, understanding that the legal market in Nigeria is so deep and is not Lagos or Abuja or Port Harcourt located, and designing processes to elevate the level of practice in those places and creating champions even within those places. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so very much. Again, thank you for the time. I'll hand over to Tobina now to pilot the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Kunle. Thank you for assisting with Q&A. I can see that Chike is still here. Chike, thank you for staying on. Dioya Adefulu, thank you very much. Ntai, Sarah Omega, the panelists, thank you. And thank you to the audience. Now to Dr. Owolabi. Tomini, what an amazing presentation. I mean, the comments on the chat box says it all. I mean, the word that has been used often here is awesome, awesome, awesome. And indeed an awesome presentation. I mean, the topics that have been dealt with today, yours and Chike's are topics that, of course, are not the everyday lawyer's topics, not technical at all. And sometimes we might think that they're simple to deal with, but the delivery has been absolutely amazing. And I'm very grateful to you for being with us today and for the presentation, and indeed for the time you spent more than what was allocated to you. So thank you very much, and I hope that when we invite you again, you would indulge us again. Thank you, Tomini.
Thank you very much, Tomina. I have enjoyed myself, and thanks for the great work you're doing with training lawyers and building the level of practice in Nigeria. Great work, and we all owe you a great deal of gratitude. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Tomini, for your kind words. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. We'll continue with the training sessions next Tuesday. And of course, we'll circulate advert and information regarding the same. The recordings of all the trainings are on the MBA YouTube channel, Nigerian Bar Association HQ. So for those who were not able to join or didn't join on time, just know that the essence is to democratize learning and knowledge. So thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sarah.